Aloha. Welcome to Light Drama Action. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. And let's get to the content for today. Peace.
Before we begin, I want to offer a clear and firm warning. What you are about to hear contains graphic descriptions. This content is intended for mature audiences only. Listener discretion is strongly advised. And remember, all individuals mentioned in this video, including Mr. Combs, are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. If you're joining us for the first time, full summaries for days 1 through 25 are available on the video tab of this channel. Day 26 of the Combs trial. On Friday, June 20th, 2025, the 26th day of testimony, prosecutors put two witnesses on the stand, Brendan Paul, a quietly intense former assistant to Sean Diddy Combs, and Joseph Cerciello, a Homeland Security special agent. Paul, a 29-year-old one-time personal aide, spent 18 months working for Combs from late 2022 into early 2024. He was known around Combs' world as a gopher of sorts, arranging everything from private jets and hotels to illegal substances. Paul had immunity for his testimony, and he told jurors he helped Combs prepare for the marathon sex parties that federal prosecutors call freak-offs. Combs' defense calls them consensual swinger events. Agent Cerciello, by contrast, is a career investigator who helped build the government's case with charts and documents. Together, their testimony tied many threads of the case into one courtroom picture, even as it exposed sharp contradictions with earlier accounts. Paul described being handpicked by Combs' team to keep the operation running smoothly. He said his day began before dawn and often ended in the next morning with little rest. He would sometimes work 60 or 72 hours in a row with only a few naps. He does not take no for an answer, Paul told the jury, quoting Combs' own words. He said he wanted us to move like SEAL Team 6, nothing taken by surprise. Under the relentless pace, Paul admitted, "I was young, so I was able to handle it. I would take Adderall and rarely use cocaine to stay alert." The stenographer's page filled with his testy recital of Combs' day-to-day demands, fetching clothes, passports, even a much-coveted Lululemon waist pack. Paul's shifts sometimes ended in bizarre emergencies. In late October 2023, "I forgot his Lululemon fanny pack," he recounted, recalling how Combs reacted with fury. He said Combs ordered him fired on the spot, instructing Paul to call Christina Courtroom, the former chief of staff at Combs Enterprises, to deliver the bad news. Courtroom, often called KK in testimony, was widely portrayed as Combs' right hand in organizing parties and covering up his misconduct. Paul obeyed, but a few days later, Combs ambled into his presence as if nothing had happened and greeted him with a casual, "Hey." Paul had been laid low at Courtroom's direction and quietly reinstated without explanation. In testimony this Friday, he confirmed this tale, saying he'd been fired 2 to 3 times on minor pretexts. Once for the forgotten pack, only to be told, "Everything will be fine." The episode underscored how Courtroom served as enforcer and fixer, directing staff on and off the record, then smoothing things over. Most of Paul's testimony revolved around Combs' drug-fueled sex parties. Prosecutors say Combs held these freak-offs in hotel suites or private homes, coaxing or coercing girlfriends into multi-day sessions of sex with male escorts while he watched and recorded. The defense contends all participants were willing. Paul corroborated much of the outline the government expects to make, and he said one of his chief duties was obtaining drugs, not just store-bought stuff, but the cocktail Combs demanded: ketamine, cocaine, a pink bath salt mix called Tusi, prescription pills, and each cycle, half a pound of Combs' favorite strain of marijuana. He was buying multiple kilos of ketamine here in the United States, Paul testified, drawing a wary glance from the jury. Combs had given Paul access to credit cards and ledgers for these purchases. Paul insisted he only did the minimum Combs asked, never more than a gram or two. Still, authorities did find a small sack of cocaine in Paul's bag when he was caught at a Miami airport in March 2024. Paul said he had picked it up from Combs' hotel room that morning and stashed it in a designer duffel to hide it. He didn't mention Combs to the DEA agents who arrested him, insisting later that loyalty compelled silence. A judge eventually dismissed the charge after Paul completed drug counseling and testing. Beyond procuring drugs, Paul described prepping and cleaning up after those infamous sex parties. He testified that Combs' team even had a name for them, Wild King Nights. Many former aides had described fetching candles, lubricants for these events. Paul echoed a familiar tale. He would load rooms with candles, liquor, baby oil, and Astroglide, then scrub the stains and wreckage away after the guests left. Paul also confirmed that Cassie Ventura, the R&B singer, and Combs' ex of 10 years had been in the room for these parties in years past. He conceded that Combs' wealth allowed extravagance, mentioning one private event where dozens of luxury pens and wallets, ostensibly gifts, were laid out for partygoers. In recounting all this, Paul frequently paused to reflect, at times voice low, at times defensive. When asked on cross-examination if Jane ever seemed hesitant or apprehensive about the freak-offs, Paul answered with a quiet confidence, "I didn't notice anything. Absolutely not." He insisted she never acted unwilling while the group assembled for an event. That statement rang in the courtroom against Jane's own testimony from last month, when she said she had begged Combs to stop forcing her into such encounters and even resisted violently. Jane had described one particularly harrowing incident. After Combs beat and dragged her in a Los Angeles backyard, he allegedly ordered her to take ecstasy and perform oral sex on a male entertainer named Anton, taunting her with, "You're not gonna ruin my fucking night." In contrast, Paul described nothing overt in Jane's demeanor to suggest those nights were anything other than consensual. To the jury, this presented a stark contradiction. One witness said Jane was desperate and abused. Another said she was an eager participant. The prosecution spotlighted that clash. They argued that Paul's testimony tended to vindicate Combs' narrative that these parties were voluntary. But even as he painted Jane as game for the nights, Paul underscored how exhausting the routine was for everyone. He said he personally felt indebted to Combs for teaching him business skills, but that his emotional stance was complicated. When asked how he felt about the man after all he had seen, Paul simply replied, "It's complicated." In another telling moment, the defense reminded Paul of a 3-day work stretch and asked if he actually wanted to push so hard. "I don't know if I wanted to," the told evident in a slight grimace. Defense counsel Brian Stale followed up, asking Paul if the drugs he delivered for Combs made the boss more focused. Paul quipped that Combs became extremely creative on narcotics, but in general his answers underlined what prosecutors described as the great lengths Combs' staff would go to serve him. After Paul stepped down, investigators presented their final mosaic of the prosecution's case. Over an hour and more, Cherciello methodically walked the jury through dozens of documents and timelines. His charts bore the logos of airlines, hotels, and phone carriers, all the mundane detritus of travel, but linked in a sinister story. One chart alone chronicled roughly 45 freak-off events between Combs and Jane from 2021 to 2024. Each row showed the dates she flew to meet Combs, the phone pings as party invitations, and payment logs for men who joined the parties. Cherciello confirmed that every connection on those sheets came from independent sources: flight manifests, credit card receipts, text threads, not just testimony. He told the jury he had corroborated each entry with multiple records. The damage bills, above all, made a vivid splash. Cherciello produced hotel statements showing shocking cleanup charges after the sex parties. In one case, a Miami area resort charged Combs nearly $6,000 in repairs after a multi-day party in December 2021. At another, the figures swelled. A visit to a West Hollywood hotel in January 2023 culminated in a $7,577 bill for damaged furniture and floors saturated in baby oil. Security reports even noted linen soaked in baby oil and cigarette butts everywhere. Cherciello recounted another cleanup in April 2023 that cost over $5,600. Burned lamps, torn bedding, fluids on the carpet. Strikingly, one document itemized a $3,000 fee for damaged furniture and unsanitary fluids deposited on the floors. These figures were tragicomic in this context. They told of parties that could well have been consensual, yet left scenes of extreme debauchery behind. Defense witnesses at earlier hearings had sometimes scoffed at these numbers. Combs' side called the hotels greedy. While Cerciello displayed those bills, another screen showed excerpted text messages Combs and Cassie Ventura had sent to each other. Jurors had already heard from Cassie in May about her own abuse. Now the messages added subtext. In one 2017 thread shown on the courtroom screen, Cassie texted Combs after a physical altercation, "I know if I said no, it would have been a problem. You only see me one way, you treat me like a hooker," she wrote. Combs' curt reply, "Wow," flashed next. In another message from the same era, Cassie accused him of dragging her by the hair. "As soon as you get fucked up, you drag me down the hall by my hair." The jury was left to connect this with Cassie's live testimony. She had often told the court that Combs demeaned her repeatedly as they both sought to reconcile these messages with her claim to be a victim. Prosecutors urged that all these materials fit a pattern they have alleged from the start. Combs used control and coercion, but defense attorneys have already tried to paint Cassie and Jane as unreliable narrators who were sometimes willing participants. The contrasting evidence from Cerciello provided fuel for both sides. Charts showed Cassie herself initiating many of the encounters. Text logs showed her sometimes eagerly arranging the parties, even sending explicit messages of enthusiasm. The team emphasized that in those chats, Cassie seemed at times consensual, a fact Cassie herself did not deny but explained as desperate calculation. After Cerciello's presentation, prosecutors noted that Cassie had once written a blunt warning to Combs. "As soon as you get fucked up, you drag me down the hall by my hair. I felt dead." Defense countered by pointing out other notes she sent, saying she feared his rage, invoking sympathy for her. As Cerciello wrapped up, jurors saw one final statistic on his sheet: about 45 freak-offs between Combs and Jane from 2021 through Combs' arrest in November 2023. The number converged with Paul's own estimate that those nightly rituals had become routine. In the hush of the afternoon, the evidence lay bare on the projector, a grid of dates and dollar figures and alarm partners. Judge Subramanian urged the panel not to rush to judgment as he prepared to adjourn. The day's testimony ended early to accommodate one juror's family event, and Cerciello's work would resume Monday. The prosecution announced it would rest then, after which the defense promised to call only a handful of witnesses.